Hello, good morning and welcome back to the veg garden. It's now the end of summer and we're kind of in that transition between the finishing of a lot of the fruiting crops and putting in some of the autumn and winter crops. And so today we're not doing anything particularly fancy, but we're just going to be having a bit of a cleanup, do some weeding, remove some plants that have kind of finished and prepare everything nicely for some future planting and sowing and general refreshing of all the beds. And throughout the whole process, we'll talk about some of the things that did really well and some of the things that didn't do so well. And a bit later on, we'll show you some of the things that we've harvested and some of the food that we've preserved and stored for the months ahead. So let's get started. Is this for putting all of this stuff in?
Yeah.
So one of the first things that did not do well at all this year, which is strange because they did fine the year before, was beans. Now we weren't really planning to do beans this year, but we were gifted about 50 bean plants that had been started in a big container, and we transplanted them into some of these areas that you can see behind me. We grew them on obelisks. I say we grew them because they didn't really grow at all. We subsequently sowed some more beans around the obelisks just to try and fill some of the gaps, and they just really didn't take at all. In fact, out of the 6 obelisks that we put in here with bean plants on, we harvested not a single bean, which is a bit sad. But the good news is that our neighbours grow loads of beans, and they dropped off literally sackfuls of them. So we've not had a shortage of beans, even though we didn't manage to grow any ourselves. But we haven't let that stop us. We've actually put in some more beans here in one of the no-dig beds. And because of the climate here in Portugal, the pack of beans says that these can be direct sown in the ground up until the end of September. And so we put these in a few weeks ago. It's now the 1st of October today, and they've all germinated and are starting to grow nicely. So something that we've learned about beans is they don't like the super hot sun, and they don't really like to be moved. So direct sowing has definitely worked better than the transplanting that we did previously. But we'll watch this space and see if we get some nice growth here on these obelisks. These are in no-dig beds, which have got a lot more rich nutrients in the soil compared to the area that we tried to put them in before, which was a bit of a barren wasteland previously. Oh, this is going to take a while. Yeah, well, there's been quite some rain. Whew, there's quite a lot of weeds down here.
Yeah, it's a new bed.
I was about to say to the lovely people.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking to me.
And normally we don't have so many weeds to deal with. In fact, most of them either blow in on an annual basis, or there's some seeds left over in our homemade compost, which germinate when they get some rain. But this area down here where we're working at the moment is a new addition to the garden this year. And it's crazy, it feels like years ago that we put this in, but it was just springtime in 2022. And that's why we've got a lot more weed pressure down here, because the cardboard and the bark and the compost that's gone down in this area has done a good job of smothering most of the weeds. Otherwise it would look like all of this crazy long grass beyond the perimeter of the garden. But the cardboard decomposes, and some of the weeds are very vigorous and they push straight through it. But we actually find most of the weeds in the pathway, not in the bed, which is good because it means that the weeds aren't competing with the vegetables so much. But it does make it a little bit tricky to get them all out. The good news is the chickens absolutely love these weeds, and they will have a small feast later on.
So one of the things that did do really well this year, and for most gardeners it actually happens every year, is courgettes. Last year we really struggled, and we put in many plants and not many of them took. This year almost every single one that we put in took, and then has continued to fruit for a long time. These are still fruiting, they're putting off new side shoots. We have done a lot of preserving of our courgettes. We'll show you some of our canning efforts a little bit later. But yeah, it's one of the things that I've done a lot of research on, the different ways that you can use courgette. And I guess next year, maybe we won't plant so many. We gave away a lot. One of our neighbours really loved the one ball variety that we brought from the UK. And so maybe we will do as many, because they don't have that variety and they kept coming back asking for more. So that was nice. It was a nice way of sharing them around. Speaking about courgette, we've also used some to make wine with, which we're going to show that video when the wine is in a drinkable state. It takes a while, that one, so that's something to look forward to if you're into making booze out of random things. New experiment as well. I mean, I've never made a wine. Well, I've never made one from fruit until last year, let alone a vegetable.
Something I forgot to mention earlier is that the only reason that we've got so many weeds here is because this is a new area. After a year or two, most of the weeds that are still living below all of the cardboard and the compost and the bark end up dying off. And then you only have to deal with the blow-in. But because this is so new, like 6 months or so, there's still quite a bit of pressure from underneath.
It looks much better once it's heated.
Yeah, right.
It's just the pain of doing it.
So the asparagus was a bit of an experiment, and it seems to have worked, which is kind of cool. When I was reading up on how to plant asparagus, because we've never grown it before, there was lots of things about digging trenches and adding amendments like gravel and sand for drainage, because asparagus apparently don't like to have wet feet, or they don't like it to be too soggy. And there was this thing about you make a mound and you spread the crown roots across it and all sorts of things. But we also consulted Charles Dowding and some of the content that he's got about asparagus, and he said, no, you don't need to do any of that, just create an undisturbed area, mulch with a bunch of compost, spread out the roots nice and flat, and see what happens. And we got a whole bunch of growth, which is really exciting. Now, I don't know if it's a good amount of growth, or if, I mean, there are some that are quite small, but some that have put out many more kind of spears and fronds and things like that. These are all male, so they should produce more spears in the future, but we do have to wait a few years in order to properly harvest. At the moment, the plants are just putting in strong roots so that they can then last for many years. I think it's something like 10 plus years, maybe even 20 years, that an asparagus plant can survive. And so in years to come, we will have a nice harvest of asparagus. But for now, we can just look at these lovely fronds. Some of them are stronger than others. We've had to put in a few bits of bamboo and tie them on just so that they don't flop all over the place. But so far so good, and hopefully we get continued strong growth in the future. So something else that did very well this year, tomatoes. Although there was one aspect of it that we still haven't quite got right, which is the trellising. We definitely improved on the previous year's trellising with what we've got here, with these fence posts and then these kind of, I don't even know what they are, artificial bamboo stakes. But it still wasn't sturdy enough. The tomato plants get so big and so laden with fruit that we really need something that's a little sturdier. But regardless, we got loads of tomatoes, and the ones that we've just pulled out now, there's lots of green ones, there's also quite a few red ones, and we could have let them go longer to produce more and to all ripen up, but we really just want to clear as much as we can today so that we're ready for the winter plantings in a couple of weeks. And the green ones make a really nice green tomato salsa. We did a test batch of it a few weeks ago with a few green ones, and it was really, really tasty. Lots of fresh coriander, some red onion, bit of olive oil, some chili, really, really tasty. One of the tomatoes that didn't do so well were the little black cherry ones.
They went a bit wild. We did, I can't think. We did limited pruning. And it made it really difficult. I think we also put them too close together, so they didn't have enough space, so we couldn't get into the tomatoes.
Yeah, they got very leggy.
Yeah, and what's funny is compared to the other tomatoes, they came in way later in the season. So yeah, I don't know. We'll try again. We'll save some seed and we'll give it another go. But you know, we're still learning. See, look at all these green ones. They're still coming, they're still flowering. It's October, my friends.
I'll go and get another crate.
Yeah.
I can come and help you with that. Good morning. It is a new day. It was getting way too hot in the garden the other day, so we called it quits. We're back this morning to finish up before we call this garden cleanup done. So let's talk about peppers.
They've done well. We've probably planted too many.
We've got some nice yellow ones in here. Most of the ones down here are green, although some good sizes. There's a couple of red ones hiding. And then these ones I sowed from seed. Some nice, like Romero style, but they really didn't take off. In fact, there was a big marigold here, which I think was shading things out. And there was a couple of other small ones from seed as well, which didn't really do so well. These ones were all from plugs. And certainly one thing that we found with the peppers is they get sunburnt quite easily, which is why we had the bit of shade cloth over the top. It was a bit of a makeshift rough and ready solution, so we just kind of pegged it on top of some of the stakes that we'd had supporting the peppers, which worked fine. Didn't look great, but it worked. And it meant that some of our later harvest of peppers were really nice quality and didn't have all sorts of sun scorch marks on them.
This area. Next year, definitely need to do a bit more pruning.
Yeah, we just kind of let these go wild.
Yeah.
And there's still loads of fruit and even some flowers, so I think we'll just leave these in until they give up, which could be some time.
Well, until the weather goes cold, or until we need the beds, I guess.
So whilst Kylie finishes up with the peppers in the background, we can talk a little bit about the aubergines. We tried aubergines for the last 2 years, but we put them in pots. And I think those pots were just way too small and they didn't get enough water. And so we never really got many fruit at all. Maybe some, but very, very small. But this year we had 4 plants in 2 of these no-dig beds. And we must have had about 30 aubergine already. And there's still more on the plants. Again, we're going to leave these and just kind of let them run their natural course until they stop producing. But we are going to harvest most of these now. We might give some to the neighbours and we might do some more preserving with them. We made some really nice chutneys and relishes with these, a few Thai curries. And again, this is another story of kind of just putting things in and letting them go. We probably should have pruned them a bit more. We probably should have given them a bit more support. And space, yes, and space. Basically all the things differently, but regardless, we got loads and loads of food out of them, so not all is lost. So that's another 4, 5.
It's still doing really well. I need some more water as well, I think.
So we're almost done out here with harvesting. We've got a lot more tidying up to do, but that's only so interesting. But one thing that we probably should talk about is this whole area down here where we had our corn. We've still got sweet potatoes, which are doing amazingly well. I think this time last year we'd already harvested them, but they're still putting on new growth and still looking really lush and green. So we're going to leave them for a bit longer, maybe get some bigger potatoes. We got a bit of a mixture last year, some really big ones and lots of very small ones. So we're going to leave them grow for a bit longer. But down here, where we also had the beans that we talked about earlier, we had, I would say, mixed success. In fact, that might even be being a bit optimistic. The corn that we put in was very hit and miss. We did get some, which we've dried to turn into chicken food, but we didn't really get anything that was worth eating. And I think it's all down to the soil, because we had a similar problem in this section down here behind me, where we had potatoes. We did a dig versus no dig potato experiment, and the potatoes down here didn't do very well. When we cleared all those out, we put in a few random bits of other plants that we had ready but no space for. So there was some more courgette down here, some squash, some butternut, some other little sweet dumpling pumpkin, and just everything in this dig area where we tilled the soil and didn't really amend it with anything, just put in some plants and gave it some water. None of this did very well at all. And it's because, in contrast to the no-dig area, there's not as many nutrients here. In the no-dig area, we've put on lots of compost, whereas over here, it's just kind of a clay-based soil. Very hard in the summer, and yeah, it didn't really do so well. But it was an experiment, and we learnt a few things from it. And I think one of the most important lessons was this is too big of an area for us at this stage, whilst we're still doing a big house renovation, and whilst we've got lots of other things on the land that we're trying to keep on top of. So next year we're going to be reducing the size of the garden and just focusing on the no-dig area that we've already put quite a lot of time and effort and materials into. And we're going to try and focus on getting better at growing the things that we've already been growing and the things that we want to grow more of, just so that we can kind of hone that skill a bit more, get better at timing, get better at watering, just enough, not too much, and yeah, try and focus our efforts a little bit down there. In the future, we will be expanding out to this area with no-dig beds, and behind me there'll probably be a new compost bay area and possibly even a polytunnel. So we have lots more garden experiments to come in the future, but for now, whilst we're so busy doing so many different things, we're going to consolidate a little bit for next season. And I think we're pretty much wrapped up out here, but I did say that we'd show you some of the things that we'd preserved and some of the other harvests that we had earlier in the year. Let's go into the house and take a look at some of those. Yep.
This is our very sophisticated root cellar. We will be building a proper one in the future. Stay tuned for that in about 10 years' time. In here we have all the preserves that we did for this season. Now this is really our first season doing preserving, and a lot of it was experiments. Most of it worked, some of it didn't. Some of it was done using what's called the open kettle method. A lot of it was done with the water bathing method, and we had one failed batch.
Oh, we had something with the orange juice as well.
Oh yeah, so originally we had all of this stored upstairs, which is much warmer, and we had a very hot summer. The contents of the jars of the orange juice got hot from being in a warm, we didn't have them covered, we didn't have anything. We had them in boxes, but they, I guess the liquid expanded, or I don't know, whatever, and some lids popped off. And that was when we decided to bring it down here, which is probably 5 degrees cooler than upstairs.
Oh, at least,
maybe
yeah.
more.
This rarely gets above 25.
And here in this particular corner, it's nice and humid and cool, and mostly out of the light because we keep the doors closed. Let me walk you through some of the things that we really like, that really worked really well. And probably my favorite, yeah, is this one. It's an aubergine and tomato chutney. So it's got some onion, aubergine, tomato, a couple of bell peppers.
Is that the one with juniper in it?
Yes, that's that one. It's really good. I also like this one, which is a Moroccan tomato and aubergine dip. And so this one is blended, that one is chunky.
Yeah, that one's got cumin in it, and it's really nice and
really good.
spicy.
And this is the one that didn't go so well the first time. So when I did it the second time, because I really liked it so much, I actually water bathed it the second time. The first time I just open kettled it. I think that has anything to do with it. I think there was just something off with the produce because they all went, not just one or two. Guy did ketchup.
Yeah, we did a couple of ketchup-like things. One was a pretty standard tomato ketchup with some cloves as a bit of spice. And then Kylie did what was supposed to be a chili tomato, a tomato and chili jam, but it came out much more like a ketchup. That had ginger in it, and it's got a really nice kick to it. Not too spicy from the chili, but the ginger gives it a really nice warmth. And yeah, we just love condiments, and they really make a meal. And it's really nice, even if you're having something fairly standard that may be from shop bought ingredients, to be able to put something homemade on the plate or on the food is it always fills me with joy.
Something else, and I didn't even know, I've never eaten this before, is caponata. It's an Italian...
Yeah, almost like an appetizer almost.
Yeah, and so it looks, again, it's got aubergine and tomato in it. It looks very much like the chutney, but completely different taste. So a box plus 3 jars.
Yeah, it's probably worth saying all these boxes are full of jars, but we're keeping them in the boxes to keep the light away.
And also because our labelling system needs some work. Another one, this one. So this one was an experiment. I don't have any singles of it.
Oh yeah, this one's really good.
I was doing a tomato and courgette style dip, and then the colour looked like baby sick. And so I thought I didn't want to just jar it like that. So Guy blinged it and made it into a curry sauce. And it's an amazing like vegetable curry sauce that we can then later add either fresh vegetables or meat to. It's amazing. I will definitely be doing that again. Unfortunately, it wasn't from a recipe per se, so I don't really remember what I did. And that's one thing that we didn't do this year either, was really keep a record of the recipes and whether we like them. And I have a load of pickles and relishes here, and I don't remember which ones are which, but these ones particularly. So, but they're all just condiments to go on burgers and salads and things. And then there's a couple that are uncooked. So it's another Italian recipe. It's a pickled aubergine or eggplant.
Has it got chili in it?
It does have some chili in it. And this, again, another so this is grilled courgettes. We've had one of these because it was an extra, and it's quite mushy, so I think next time we wouldn't cook the courgette as much. And this is what we're learning, is like what you have to do and what you don't have to do.
We're learning lots of things you can do with courgettes.
And cucumber. There's a couple of things in the fridge I want to show you as well. We have grapes, going to be used to make a grape ale. More grapes. All of these cucumbers, and under here there's bags of diced cucumbers. That's for, I don't know, relishes or something in the future. Don't look at the pizza. In here we have, this is courgette. This is courgette. And this is courgette. We had a lot of courgette. So
this is very trusting, showing all the contents of our fridge and freezer.
This is some fermented courgette. I have yet to try it. It's been in here for
a long time now.
A long time. We need to start eating that. This is orange juices from last season. This is some tomatoes that we harvested earlier on in this video, here and here, that we are going to process.
Oh, we've got more tomatoes in there.
There's more.
There's the chili paste from last week.
And then there's a selection of
pickly things.
Pickles and things there. And let's see. This is ours, lemon curd. This was...
oh, carrot top pesto.
Carrot top pesto. This is some plum and apple jam, I think it was.
Yep. And there's a black cherry jam as well.
This one?
Yep.
And then that's one of my aubergine things that's left over. And that's some ketchup that's in progress.
So as you can see, many things that have been preserved. There's also a bunch of raw ingredients which we've got kind of hiding in the corner, and also some wine and some beer in progress. Let me show you those. That is a big stack of potatoes. That goes all the way down to the bottom there. All the different varieties, including about 60 kilos that the neighbours gave us. In this one here, we've got, these are some of the small sweet dumpling pumpkins. That's a beetroot that needs eating. Let me put that up there. And then we had, so far we've had one butternut squash, but then quite a lot of these red curries. I think there is a whole tray of them here. Oh, that looks better.
Can actually see what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, we've got oh, this is a butternut from last year actually. So we got some of that left over. And then these are the spaghetti squash, which apparently are not like spaghetti if you store them for a long time. So should we have that tonight?
Yeah.
And so some of these little sweet dumplings are bigger than others. I don't know how big they're supposed to be, but
I'm going to swap these over so
okay,
that the older butternut gets eaten first.
They're heavy, huh? Many kilos of pumpkin. And we didn't mention them earlier, but of course we've got these massive pumpkins at the top here. I don't know what variety they are because they were a gift. The plants were a gift. And we grew this huge thing up here, which is, I don't know how many kilos it is, maybe 10, 15 kilos of pumpkin. And then we got these 2 slightly smaller ones as well. And the last thing to talk about is some of the booze that we've been making. We've got some down here. So these are some of the fruit wines from last year. This one's easy to remember. It's got a label on it, cherry. Last year's cherry was really good. This year's cherry, not so good so far. We've got some peach wine. Oh no, that's pear wine, very good. And this one's a plum wine. And I think this is our 2020 Vinho Tinto. The red wine we made last year, we used completely the wrong process, but we still made something that is kind of wine-like. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's actually improved a huge amount over the last year. But this year, I think we've done a much better job because at least we got the right process down this time. So I can go and show you what it looks like at the moment. It's nothing too special, but at least there's something we can show you over there. Ooh, let me just move this out of the way a little bit. There we go. So this here is the 2020, what year is it?
22.
22. So I was wrong when I said the 2020 Vino Tinto because it was actually 2021. If you saw one of our previous videos, I think it was one of the Ask videos, we showed some of the primary fermentation of this wine at the very end. This is the same batch, but it's now been pressed and put into these barrels with the airlocks on the top to keep all the oxygen out. And so we ended up with about 30 litres in total from the harvest from our place and from a friend's place put together. And we've got another batch of about 40-ish litres on the go in the next room. We've also got some beer projects down here. The one in the background is an orange ale made with some dehydrated orange peel from our fruit. And then the one in front here is an American style pale ale, which I finished just yesterday, and it is bubbling away furiously, or it was, seems to have stopped. It's camera shy. It started again, that's exciting. Oh, it's very bright out here compared to in the Adega. I think that's all we have to show you today. We've been very busy this year growing many different types of fruit and veg and then turning it into all sorts of delicious things to go on the shelf, which we now get to enjoy for some time. And next year we are going to scale things down a little bit in the garden, but we will do lots more preserving, lots more winemaking, and lots more of other things as well. So do stick around for all of that stuff to come in due course. But that's it for now. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.